Okay, students, so before we get started with the negative space project, I want to show you how to make a border. Now this can be done just with a ruler. It doesn't have to be a long one necessarily, but it's, well, a longer ruler would work better. Something that's at least 24 inches. And some kind of hard pencil, something in the H range, like a 2H or 4H. And the idea is that when you make the border, you're not trying to make really heavy marks. I tend to draw darker for the videos only because the lines don't show up if I don't. But for you, really remember that you can be making your marks lightly, so use a light touch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 2 inches from the edge of the page, make a little mark here, and go down here to the bottom and do the same. And then use my ruler, connect the two. So I'm just making a 2-inch border. I think that would work good for this project. Okay, so again, I did it very lightly. Here, let me do it again, sorry, so that it's darker. I want you to be able to see this time. Just harder pressure, and I get a line on that side. Now I'll repeat that process on all the sides. Again, 2 inches. Try to get above your ruler, so your eye's above, so you can really see what's happening. Again, 2 inches. And this give you nice 90-degree borders. And then I do 2 inches along this side as well. Now, the only exception to this is whatever your bottom edge is going to be. For me, I'm working in a vertical format, so this would be my bottom edge. If for some reason you found yourself working in a horizontal format, in this case, this would be my bottom edge, I'd want to weight this border. But the idea is you want to make the bottom edge border slightly larger, just visually larger. So I'm going to go ahead and make this one, instead of 2 inches, 2 3/4. Just big enough that it's noticeably larger. And the reason that is, and this is a very common trick that framing shops use and artists use for their artwork, if it is to be framed or matted, to give a slightly thicker edge to the border on the bottom edge so that it doesn't appear as if it's sagging on the wall. It's kind of just an optical illusion. Okay. Again, when you make yours, please make them much lighter because you're really the only one that has to see them. All you need is just the white elegant edge around the sides that you're not going to be drawing into. And now this inner space is going to be my new composition and what I'm going to be working in. All right, so let me kind of show you how I would set up this drawing. Now, normally I would be working at an easel. It's kind of imperative for this project that you're working vertically. So whether you set it up in a chair or however you do it, make sure that your drawing is set up in a way that you can use sighting techniques, because that's going to be important in some of the dimensions that we're going to do. But just for the sake of illustration, I'm going to work flat just so you can see what's happening. So my first thing that I would do is, before we even started tackling the negative space, is I would use a gesture to sort of figure out my composition. Say, for example, I was drawing a chair. I would take sightings, try try to find the different angles of the different aspects of the chair. And just draw it very lightly. Remember, these are just gestures, so it's just mainly just to find the composition on the page. And it can be a little bit messy. And done kind of quickly. But again, though, one thing that you do want to do is make sure you're using sighting to check, make sure these angles are right. And a very common mistake is to make the seat too big. So make sure you're checking that, the distance from here to here, using your pencil as a sighting tool, as a measuring tool, and compare it to different distances you see somewhere in the image to make sure this isn't too wide. I think the reason is when people look at chairs, their mind sort of thinks of the seat and they want a safe place to sit, so they almost over illustrate the seat part. So again, use measuring to figure that out. And once that seems like it's like right, and you're happy with how everything sort of looks as a gesture, now I'm gonna really flip my mind around and quit focusing on the chair at all. I really want to start looking at the negative spaces. So I might start those sort of gesturally. So say I'm drawing the holes between the slats. Okay. And then once you're happy with how those gestures look and make sure that those feel like they're the right size, you can go in and go a little bit darker. And more carefully complete them. Etc. So again, I'm paying attention to the positive space a little bit just to kind of make sure that everything's lining up where it's supposed to be. But really, really, really make yourself draw the openings, the negative space. I'm going to go ahead and fill some of these in with my pencil so you can see what I'm talking about. And the positive space is just going to end up being a white silhouette. Okay, so down here you're going to have similar sort of things to work with. I want to figure something out here. See, that would go like that. Some more. Trying to figure out where those would be. Okay. I'll finish this piece here. Again, you don't need to draw this dark yourself. I do this for the sake of illustration, but I want you to be able to see what's being done on the camera. When I get to these outside open negative spaces, I have to be a little bit more aware because the temptation is, again, very easily for me to want to start drawing the chair itself. But really imagine that what you're drawing
is those negative spaces. I can tell the difference. And I know that I can tell the difference when someone has drawn a positive space versus a negative. There's a difference in quality of how it looks. So for you, just be sure that you're really sticking to that, the project. Make sure that you're actually drawing the negative spaces. For one, you won't learn anything if you don't. And that's not going to help you at all when you get to like later stages in the semester. I'm going to come down here. And so I've worked on a big chunk of open negative space. But like I said, it's not going to help you in later parts of the semester when you're really going to need to start relying on negative space to make your drawings look right. So make yourself learn it by doing it. But also because like you won't be graded as well. Like I will be able to tell essentially. All right, so here's a nice and closed negative space. I'm just drawing this shape here. Then I'll go in here and I'll draw this shape. Oops. Should put it over there a little bit. Okay. And then I'll go down maybe to this open negative space here. Okay. Then I maybe go into this little one. And you get the picture. Starts coming together. That's how the chair would look. Now, you can either do a chair, or the other option would be, let's see, let me move this over. You could go find some stuff from your garden. You can find some plant life. You can find some, I don't know. Leaves work really well, as long as they have a good amount of negative space. There's instances where you can have too much, and there's instances where you can have too little. So you want something that kind of illustrates a good, maybe a balance between the positive and negative space. And I might start by maybe drawing some kind of branch or whatever it is as a gesture. I'm just making up a plant right now, so, forgive me if it doesn't look super realistic. And, maybe there's some kind of leaf structures on here. I'm just going to gesture at first. Okay, to know what my composition would look like, just as a gesture. And then I would start maybe in one of these nooks and crannies and really start following. You can deviate from your gesture as much as necessary. Making sure these organic, open shapes fit. And so this negative space here looks exactly like the negative space that you're looking at. And then you would just continue the drawing going into all the other negative spaces that you might see. It can get quite complicated with different little branches and leaves and other sort of things going off, but it can be quite beautiful, and the organic shapes look really good as well, in addition to doing something like a chair. Now, once you've done that part, once you've gotten the negative spaces drawn and you've created this structure, I want you to take your eraser and make sure you take out any little bits of drawing that interrupt the negative space. You can leave these contours here, the ones that are supposed to illustrate these openings. Okay. But anything that would constitute a contour that kind of like interrupts the silhouette of this chair, make sure you take those out first. And clean this stuff all out of the way so it's totally gone. You don't want a bunch of like eraser boogers sticking to your glue. So you want to get that stuff off your page really nicely. And then once you've done that, get yourself some newspaper or, oh, I don't know. You can use construction paper, but my recommendation is to use stuff that, I like the newspaper from the business section, you know, where they have like the notice of fictitious business name or the funeral notices or things like that, because the print is very dense. And when you have really dense print, it creates that that visual gray much nicer. And you could either use your cutting tool to cut out chunks of text, or you can just rip out pieces. Whatever works best for you. Or if you have, scissors, doesn't really matter. And once you start getting these pieces, tuck them into the negative spaces. Find places where they will fit. Sometimes you'll have to like draw them differently. And here, let me move this over. Until all the negative space in here is filled with a newspaper or construction paper. Now you might be tempted to use comics or something that's very colorful, but I'll honestly tell you, after all your hard work here, making this nice silhouette in white, if you put a bunch of busy color all over the place, fill this up with, bright oranges and yellows and greens and things that you might find in a comic book or the comic section, it will become distracting and it'll take away from your drawing. It won't look as neat. So I'm going around the outside right now. I might need some skinny little pieces for in between those slots. And then I'd use my glue stick just to glue these into place. So this looks like it might fit in here. You can overlap them and just fill in the negative space until you have a white silhouette. Okay.